Well, good Monday evening. It's February 5th, 2024. Welcome to episode 49 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Tonight's discussion, we're going to be talking about the state of things here on the homestead, getting into some Q&A and covering the main topic of the evening, which is the problem and the solution as it relates to civility within our society. I think there's been a loss of civility, which isn't only happening here in the United States. I think it's something that goes across geographical boundaries. And I wanted to kick around some ideas and maybe why this is happening and what we can do to restore civility. But before we go there, how are you tonight, Rebecca?
I'm good. And you?
Good, good. Yeah, we had a pretty wild last couple of days. Particularly the last 24 hours, it's been pretty stormy out here on the West Coast. And I think there's been a lot of concern elsewhere, but we've actually managed to fare pretty well here. We got a lot of rain, a lot of wind, but that's something we're actually kind of set up for and not really going to be impacted like some of the folks maybe down in Southern California where they don't get the rain. And when they do get a lot of it, it causes flash flooding and a lot of mayhem down there. But yeah, I only had a few branches to pick up this morning, which I think was largely due to we get a lot of winds here on average. It's usually fairly windy here in the wintertime when we get storms. So 40 miles an hour is pretty common. Probably one time a year we'll get up around 60 mile an hour. And so that has a tendency to clean things out of the trees. Plus last year we had a pretty good snowstorm come through. It basically limbed all of our trees. So
that cleaned a lot out.
Yeah. So I was really happy this morning to find out that, things weren't as bad as maybe I think some people really were running into this morning. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's already February now, guys. The first month of the year is gone. And I was starting to think, wow, that's like that went by really quick. And so what I did is I actually wanted to look at what I had written down as far as some of my goals and say, hey, did I get any of these done? And I kind of thought that I really hadn't gotten any of them done because I know that I didn't get any of the big things that I wanted done, like the solar hasn't been done, the deck, the water system, and all of those sort of things. But as I looked down my list, I noticed that I actually had gotten a few things done. And one of them was a project that I'd been putting off for years, I guess. And it's one of those things where you look at it and you say, well, that's something I'm going to have to do. I'm just going to keep putting it off. But by the time I actually broke ground on it, it only took me 2 days to do. And basically what I had done was tied into my existing water system and ran water all the way back into the chicken yard and then also into this new orchard area that I am developing. So I put a hose bib out there and I put 3 hose bibs in the chicken yard. And it's just really nice to actually pull the trigger on things that you just postpone. I mean, and a lot of it is just priorities, but that's been a priority of mine because I want to make things easier for her out in the chicken yard when I'm gone. And so it's actually something I was talking with Tag from Life Done Free about when we were in Kentucky. And he was talking about how he has things set up in his chicken yard and how it's mostly pretty, not, I wouldn't say automated, but it's very user friendly as far as either his wife managing the chicken out in the yard, or if somebody were to have to come in, it's something that is less for them to have to try to navigate. So I was able to get that done, and I'm really quite happy about that. Another thing is I wanted to expand some fruit trees out in an orchard that I'm developing out here. And I hadn't done that for years because it was something that I was using for other things. But I've recently this year and then starting last year, deciding, hey, I'm going to just turn that into a planting space and start putting in some fruit trees out there and making more food production for that particular space. So right now we are in the heart of bare root season. So if you are somebody who is interested in planting bare root trees, now is your time to do that. Anywhere from January to about March is when you're going to want to do that, depending on what zone you're in. So here we can start putting trees in January. It's not like we're dealing with a snow load or anything like that. But you definitely want to do that prior to these trees starting to exit their dormant period, and then they start pushing buds out. And we're already starting to get some trees here that are pushing buds out. Some of the plums, some of the almonds, they're an early budding tree. So if that's something that you are looking at doing, and maybe you don't have maybe a clear understanding of that, or even if you do, understand that I just released a video, I think 2 weeks ago, talking about how to select bare root fruit trees and give you some different ideas there. And then also, I'm going to be releasing this weekend planting bare root fruit trees. And so this is just another idea on how I do things here and why I do them that way, so that maybe you can get some just some information. There's many different ways to do things. You'll see a lot of different people doing things a lot of different ways. And I encourage you to look at all of those things. I'm not trying to monopolize the idea that I have things right for me, because everybody's context is going to be different. You may have a different soil type. You may have different trees that you're putting in for different reasons. It's just very good to try to expand your information base and understand that the only way that you're going to learn how to do any of this stuff is just actually go out and do it. Because again, you can watch somebody do something on YouTube and think, oh, I'm going to do that. Well, things might work out for you in that way, or they might be completely different when you actually get to doing it on your property. But as they say, the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago. And the next best time was today or tomorrow. That's the second best time, is right now. So that's why I'm just pointing this out, because it is something that I look forward to doing. I'm extremely busy right now, trying to spend a little bit more money to put trees in here.
You're spending money. You're spending money.
Yeah. It's honestly, I'd love to put in another 30 trees right now, but it's just a cost factor. Trees right now in California are ranging, and I'm talking good trees. I'm not talking going to Tractor Supply or getting them from your box store where you can get them for $15 all day. But those are, kind of a lesser quality of tree. And essentially you get what you pay for. But at our nurseries right now, you're looking at anywhere from like 30-ish, 32 for your smaller caliper trees on up to 50 for your 3/4-inch caliper, more established second year trees. So that's kind of the price range we're working with here. And I've already put in 15 trees additionally this year, some fruit and mostly fruit, quite honestly. They're all mostly fruit bearing. The only thing that I didn't put in fruit bearing was I just put in a flowering cherry, which I kind of wanted to try. And I like things that are aesthetically pleasing. So if I can find a fruit bearing tree, I've got some peaches and I've got some other nectarines that are like double flowering. So they put on a lot of show when they come to bloom. That's to me a double benefit, because it's not just about the fruit that you get. It's what you're going to have as far as from maybe an aesthetic purpose or some other function, with the trees that you're planting. So the video that I've got coming up this week is me planting some Pakistan mulberries, which will have multifunctionality. Will be used for fodder. The leaves will be used for fodder for me, as well as they are fruit bearing, which a Pakistan mulberry is an incredible mulberry. They're probably about, I'd say 4 inches long, and they're just awesome. We take them and we strip them right off the thing, and then, we'll smear them on pancakes or waffles or whatever, or you could make jam with them or whatever.
Make wonderful jam.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that's what will be coming up this weekend. I just put that video together, and like I say, if that's something you're interested in, definitely check it out.
And those prices that you gave, that was for the bare root, not ones that are already potted.
Correct. Right now, quite honestly, guys, it's the best time for a lot of reasons. For, one is just the variety of trees that you're going to get. You're going to get them probably at a cheaper cost, because once they go into the pots, they're going to be more expensive. And then also too, a lot of those trees that you get that are potted up, they're going to have like health issues because they've been in those pots for some time. What happens a lot of times is maybe they'll pot them up, they'll be in something smaller, and then the roots will start to circle, they'll get bound up in there. And then when they repot them and put them in something bigger, they don't correct that problem. They just pull them out and stick them into a bigger pot, put more potting soil around them. And then you still have, just more circling roots. And so that's something that can affect the health of your tree in the future. And it's just better to get something that, you can establish and see what the roots look like, and get something healthy. But I guess enough on that, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. Also too, I'm creating work for myself because I hadn't intended on fencing that area in, but now that I've done that, I'm going to be enclosing that area and segregating it off, because I don't like the idea of spending all that money and time and effort to have deer coming into that area. So I will be refencing that area this spring, not only to keep deer out, but I also want to keep rabbits out, keep jackrabbits out. There are other areas on the property where we don't have things segregated. And if they want to come in there and they want to risk their fate, so to speak, come on in. But these areas are going to be segregated because, like I said, I just don't like putting a bunch of work in and then coming out one morning and seeing all your trees and everything destroyed. So it's more work I'm creating for myself, but it's something I'm more than happy to do.
Keeps him busy.
And she loves me to spend money. So.
Oh yeah, I really love that. That's one of my favorite things.
Right. Well, before I go too much further, let me just pop in here to the comments section and see what's going on. I see we got some comments there. Let's see here, man. Right on. Sylvia Gibson, how are you this evening? Yeah, no, we're good from the floods. We didn't have any issues at all. Skanes girl, how are you this evening?
Although when we bought this house, it flooded like crazy.
The house didn't flood.
Not the house, but the property.
The property was pretty wet. It's sits down a little bit lower. Water comes into here, and then our property's a little bit flatter, and they didn't have the water control done. So that was one of the first things that I did was, get a V ditch ran all the way to the back of the property, and we've got the water routed properly now. But yeah, Seb from the streets of Torn. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Welcome this evening. Tim Riley, what's up, man? Just put 2 bare root peach trees in this afternoon. Right on. Yeah, it's the way to go. It really is, because perennials for the win. Let's just call it like it is. Annuals are great. We love our annuals. We love our corn, and we love our cucumbers and tomatoes and all those things that we get on an annual basis. But there's trees here that I planted 20 years ago that I'm getting a yield off of. So, I mean, that's just, to me, that's a win. You plant it one time, do a little bit of maintenance in between seasons or what have you, and then you've got that fruit or that nut or that whatever that you've planted coming like year after year. And let me point this out too. It's the one thing, well, it's not the one thing, but it's a thing that you can do to your property that the government can't tax. You can dramatically improve the value of your property by planting things on it like trees. That's going to up the resale value of your property if you ever decided to resale. And it's not something that the tax man is going to come in and say, oh, I see you put in some trees here. I need to, you're going to have to pay a higher property tax. So just think about that when you're thinking about your property, either something you're getting ready to buy or you've just recently purchased, or if you're like us who've lived on a piece of property for more than 20 years ago.
Forever.
No, no, I look back and I say, well, gosh, I should have done these things, right? I'm saying that now, but if it was important to me back then, guess what? I would have done them. It wasn't important to me at that point in time, but as soon as you recognize something's important, go ahead and make action, do something, improve your situation. And that only improves the value of this property. It improves the resiliency of us and everything that's on this piece of property. So bare root trees and perennials for the win. Tim Riley, what's up? Bird Lady speaks. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Let's see, 111 A-tree ads. Yeah, good evening. Yeah, tomatoes are up, huh? Your tomatoes are up? No. I pulled tomatoes. What about?
It's been a while.
No, it's been about probably a month and a half ago. I pulled my tomatoes, because we had frost damage, and so essentially what I was left with was egg-sized seed potatoes. So now I have seed potato for my summer crop, but we've also been eating those because we have an overabundance of them. I don't need nearly that many seed potatoes, but right now is the time where I'm going to also be planting onions. So I'm going to get my onions in before February 14th, before Valentine's Day. I'll have all my onions in, and I'll have all my potatoes in by then. I'll probably start planting potatoes here in another couple of days, but it's that time of year. And yeah, I'm stoked on it. A deer destroyed my fruit trees, man. I tell you what, isn't that frustrating? I mean, it is like beyond frustrating. And yeah, I mean, there's different things you can do. You can try bone sauce. You can try those types of potions and see how well you have success with that. I found the best thing for that is to segregate an area. And I know that that's cost prohibitive for some people. It's not always easy just to go drop a bunch of coin on, putting in fence. But think about the money you've already put in and the time that you've invested into those trees. So maybe in the long run, it's actually worth it for peace of mind. And you can take and do other things in that space. If you segregate it off, you can create an entire gilded arrangement in there with all types of perennials and things that you can just walk through and have a food forest. So I don't know. Fencing is something that I'm not looking forward to, because it was one of those things where I don't want to do this or whatever. But now I'm like engaged because I just put in all those trees. So I'm going for it. Forest, Homestead, Idaho. Yeah. Good evening. Found your channel when we searched for biochar. Appreciate that video. Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you being here. I don't know which biochar video that is, but I've got one in particular that I continue to just have people commenting on, and they really have appreciated it and liked it. And so I'm glad that, the stuff that I'm putting out to some extent is of value to people. That's the whole intent of doing what I'm doing. I'm not trying to waste your time. I'm trying to put out content that people can actually get something from. And I'm not really asking you a lot in return other than just to, like the video or, tell people about the channel or whatever. And yeah, so I appreciate that. I just bought baby corn from Southern Exposure. Like what you see in Chinese food. Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah, I've never tried growing anything like that, but
I don't know if I've seen it.
We've seen it in the Chinese food, right? The little tiny little ears of corn.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the
right
little kernels of corn.
Oh, tomatoes. Yeah, you got tomatoes coming up right now, huh?
So that's what I thought she was asking about.
Oh, no, it's not.
And you've taken yours out.
Oh, yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah, it's not tomato season. We actually got tomatoes all the way into December, but then once we got a few like hard frosts, that like put that to bed. So we pulled all the green tomatoes, brought them in, and then they basically just kind of ripened on the, on the countertop. And we had fried green tomatoes and, a little bit of salad fixings, but tomatoes are long gone for us, and they won't go in until we're well into past any frost that we might see here. Let's see, where was I? Oh, and then also right now I've begun live staking some fodder trees, because here on the property we've had fodder trees for 20 something years, primarily poplar trees. And we've fed those to, our cows, and now we have sheep, and the sheep are getting to benefit from those trees when they send out shoots in the summertime. And it kind of helps to extend, the feed supply that you have. It's a really valuable thing, I think, to have on your property, particularly if you have livestock. And just another way that you can help to reduce your cost, another way that you can help to lessen your dependency on outside sources. And so that's, again, something that we've done for a number of years. I've also added some other types of fodder here. I planted some hybrid willow and some hybrid poplar. No, and hybrid willow and some white mulberry. I've also got white mulberry here on the property that's 20 years old. And again, that's just a perennial source of fodder for our animals. So, I got another video coming up on that as well, that I'll, just basically show people kind of how simple the process is. And, if that's, again, something you're interested in. I don't have any of that on the website for sale, but if some folks were interested in reaching out and trying to get some of that in the dormant season, give me, hook me up. Right?
You'll hook them up.
I'll hook them up if they hit me up. So, yeah, that's coming up. And let me see here. Yeah, let me get to Q&A. I've got a couple of questions here. One is kind of a comment, and I wanted to read it because for me, it seems like this guy kind of gets it. And this is what I would encourage anyone to do who is a gardener or thinking of being a gardener. What this person has suggested, in my opinion, is a very good thing to do with organic material. And this is related to a video that I put out regarding the collection of leaves and leaf bags and this and that. This person's name is Tanner Francisco 8759, and he says, I'm in zone 5, so I have a longer winter than you, but I cover my beds with shredded fall leaves and then cover with cardboard. Usually the snow insulates, but this year no snow, yet the cardboard and leaves were adequate, so there are still earthworms present munching away at the leaf mulch. I then lift up the cardboard, dig a small hole, and throw in my compostables and fish carcasses and cover it with soil, then the leaves, and again with cardboard. By the time I can plant in the spring, I will have put at least 1 cubic foot of compostables, kitchen scraps, and the worms will have turned it all into castings. The insulation plus natural decomposition generates heat, keeping the soil from freezing, allowing the worms to work all winter. Works like a charm. Then I could still top the beds with more finished compost before I plant in the spring. I would say that that's super good. I think what a lot of people who are gardeners don't recognize is the fact that you as the gardener really aren't the one that's growing the plant. It's the soil food web that's interacting with your plant. And so if you want to grow good plants, the first thing you have to do is grow soil and let the soil microbiology interact with your plant and exchange root exudates between the two, and all the nutrients coming from those microbes. And so it's really important that you provide cover for your soil. Think about it like this. If you're in your house and somebody rips off the roof, how comfortable are you going to be when it's 110 or when it's rainy and stormy? So you're protecting the soil food web in the same way you would be protected in your house. Soil food web, including invertebrates like worms, really like temperatures around 70 degrees, quite honestly, which sounds a lot like us, doesn't it? And so if you take the lid off of that and you've got the sun beating down on it, how happy are those things going to be in soil? Or conversely, when it's freezing, how happy are they going to be? So if you can maintain that cover to your soil in the wintertime, when you basically have your beds fallow, you're not planting anything in there, you're just going to be that much further ahead when you actually go and you try to work your beds in the winter. One, there are not going to be any weeds there because you're just going to strip all that cardboard back, and you're going to see all those worms right at the surface, worms and pill bugs and all that sort of stuff. And they've done all the work for you. You don't have to weed because you've got that barrier, and the soil food web's ready to receive your plants. So I wanted to point that out because this guy, what he had stated is exactly what people should be doing. And I think that there's just a lack of understanding from a lot of gardeners that, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to grow a tomato and I'm going to put it in the ground. And then I'm going to go get some calcium and magnesium, or I'm going to get some 10-10-10 and I'm going to put it in the soil and I'm going to grow this amazing tomato. Well, you might that year, but what you're doing is you're creating a system of dependency. Rather than building a healthy soil food web, you're going out and you're giving your plants this pharmaceutical, essentially, just like what happens in the pharmaceutical industry. So just think about that. I don't want to get too preachy on that, but it is a very important point that if you're thinking at all of gardening and you don't put in something in your beds in the wintertime, if you're not growing a winter crop, those beds should be covered in some way, whether it be leaves or mulch or straw or something should be covering those beds for the weed suppression, for the erosion factor, for the moderation of temperature in the soil. It's all incredibly important. So yeah, that's that one. I had another question, and this gentleman had said, what did he say? Okay, this was a video that I was talking about as a chicken yard video, and he said, this is Jacob Mido or whatever, says, while soldier fly larvae are good for chickens, a close lookalike is housefly maggots, which my meta research shows can carry toxic bacteria and botulism. And so I basically just responded to this person by telling him that, my chickens are pretty big fans of maggots, and we usually have plenty of it with the manure load that we have, whether that be in the pig manure or the cow manure in the summertime when we have a lot of flies. And then we also run a maggot bucket where we put dead things in there, and then the flies come in and they lay eggs, and then they drop maggots out of the bucket, and the chickens, they love that. It's a great source of protein for them. And, I just told them that I never have had a problem or an issue to this point. And I usually let chickens eat what they want. And that's been my experience, is if you provide them just a bunch of opportunities at different things, then they're going to just, hey, it's a buffet, it's a smorgasbord, and they're going to make the right choice. I think a lot of people get really wrapped around the axle when they read something in some blog that was written somewhere that, oh, you shouldn't feed them citrus, or you shouldn't feed them this, or you shouldn't feed them that, or you shouldn't feed them nightshades. I feed my chickens some nightshades, a lot of them. So all those potatoes that come out, all those green tomato plants that get yanked out, or cuttings, that gets composted in the chicken yard, and the chickens go over there and they peck on them. And they eat what they want. And guess what? They lay a lot of eggs. None of them die. None of them have health issues. So I'm not exactly sure where people are getting all this information from. And I'm not saying that the information that they're putting forth isn't valid for them. All I'm telling you is that you see a lot of things on the internet. And I would just encourage people, again, go out and run your system for what's going to work best for you. And you'll find out that, you know what, maybe that wasn't right. Maybe that was just something that was written there, and then people kind of regurgitate stuff they don't really know a lot about. And so what I think this person was referring to, quite honestly, was there's a, there's birds that get like an avian strain of botulism. That's something that's actually somewhat common that birds will get, all different kind of waterfowl and things like that. And if in fact they get that, I mean, you can look it up on the internet. It's there. There's plenty of articles on this sort of thing. This isn't uncommon. And so my assumption is this is what this person read. And then they just all of a sudden thought, oh, maggots, those maggots are bad. I didn't want to get into it with them on that. But I want to point this out that it's very, a lot of times people say things that they don't really fully understand. But again, if you do your research, you'll find out that, yes, this is something that's common. And if you have maggots that have been feeding on a bird with this form of avian botulism, guess what? The maggots are going to be toxic, and anything that eats them can get that. And anything that eats the carcass of that animal, a scavenger or something like that, is going to be susceptible and get that as well. So I think that that's what the person was referring to. But again, I didn't really want to try to go into it with them. I just politely said, hey, we feed maggots here, and it's never been a problem. But just wanted to point that one out.
I think our chickens are like kids. They go for what they like first.
Everything is like that. I mean, every livestock animal is like that. If you want them to specifically eat something, you're going to have to confine them to that area only, because they're going to go and they're going to eat the good stuff, and then they'll come back later and eat the stuff that they don't want if there's nothing else left. They're no different than children in that sense. They're no different than adults. We're going to do the same thing, right? We're not going to eat the stuff we don't want to eat first. Let's see here.
True
story. Hey man, what's up, Hogs? How you doing, man? Yeah, we're good down here, man. It's all good. Yeah, we had a wet day yesterday, which was very welcome. Lost a little power last night, which again, that's something that I'm not a fan of, and that's one of the things we're working on, is getting those batteries in so we wouldn't have to even be affected by that. But we are doing well. Yeah, so you're out in Arizona. Let's see here. Where am I? I'm getting lost here. Let's see. Hang on a second, guys. I'm just trying to. Yeah, you're going. California storm system headed my way. Arizona. I work outside. Think I may have to go to call out. Yeah. Yeah, that's where it's headed. I think it's going to lose some of its intensity as, now that it's inland and not just up and over the water. But SoCal got the brunt of it. So I think it's going to be heading Arizona, New Mexico, and on further inland or what have you. But we need the rain, man. Whatever. It's what happens, right? When you have global warming, some years it rains real hard, and then other years you have a drought. So I think we can actually definitively say that has something to do with climate change, does it not? I mean, really, it's proof, right? Al Gore wouldn't lie to us. But let me get to this last comment. See, so let's see here. Okay. Sorry, guys. Getting lost here. Yeah, this was related to a video I put out on Saturday. It was just a short little trapping video showing what I've been trapping around here for just the month of January, as far as our gopher load around here. And this is from Leather Homestead, old Bruce down there in Tennessee. And he says, I like trapping because they are working when you are sitting with your feet up or sleeping. And that's like 100%. That's 100%. I wish here in California we could actually trap coyotes and use leg hold and body grip traps here, because I'd be doing that all the time, because we do have, a pretty significant coyote load here in this area. And I'd be taking care of that.
So read Old McDonald's comment.
Okay. What do we got here? Just make sure your flies and maggots are vaccinated and up to date on their boosters, and your chickens will be fine eating them. Yeah, man. Double boosted. Yep, that's us. Good one, man. I like that. Oh, man. Pfizer would love you right now, huh? That's right. Yeah, Joe Pfizer. Yeah, so being able to meet them on their terms, because when you're sleeping in your bed, that's when they come out. They know that we're not out. And so it would be awesome to be able to trap, but it is definitely something that if for some reason you needed to learn how to get some food and learning how to trap, it's a very valuable skill. And
I say you eat the gopher first.
well,
then I'll try.
I'll cook it if you want to eat it first, or you can cook it and then I'll get somebody else to eat it first. I ain't eating no damn gopher unless I have to eat a gopher. I will eat gopher if it's done right, but that ain't going to be my choice. Yeah, that's a good one, man. Vaccinating the maggots. Right on. Let's see here. I think we'll move to the main topic for this evening. The main topic is the problem and the solution. And that's as it relates to civility. Because I think we are actually going to provide you what the problem is, but at the end of this, we'll also give you what we believe is maybe a solution to some of the things that we're going to talk about. Because we don't want to just black pill people here and talk about all the things that are wrong in the world, because there's plenty of them. But we want to talk about maybe what are some of the things that we still have the ability to do to make things better. So I guess I wanted to open this up with somewhat of a rhetorical question to any of you out there and ask, has there ever been a society that anybody knows of where it's become more civil over time? Or is it a natural progression for every society to trend toward incivility? And honestly, I don't know of one, and I can't think of one. I think it would be probably possible if you were in a small clique of people, if you were in a small band of people. But the larger a society gets, it's easier to hide, I think. And then when you introduce government into that, it provides a separation between the people. And so I guess that's my question. Just an open-ended question to anybody out there who might listen. Is that something that's ever happened? Do you think it has?
I have not seen it myself personally, but I'm not a world traveler, so I only know what's going on around me.
True. Yeah, well, what I see going on around me is a lot of incivility, quite honestly. And I think it's something that I've noticed more so in recent years. And I think there's also a number of factors. Obviously, our country has had a history of strife and turmoil and different conflicts and civil war within this country. So what I'm talking about isn't maybe even to that level, but I don't know if it is trending in the right direction is kind of where I'm going with this, because the things that I've seen just more or less recently have caused me to want to talk about this. And I don't think by any means things got started in the 60s, but I think that was a period of time where a lot more skepticism toward our government and a decline in morality, quite honestly, were the two things that, although unrelated, were contributing factors to people becoming a lot more incivil. And it's just been a much less civil society. I think student protests in the 1960s surrounding the Vietnam War. We had the civil rights era issues that were of huge consequence for a lot of people. We had several assassinations that took place in the late 60s with Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr. I think Malcolm X was gunned down during that period of time. And when those sort of things happen, that's a pretty hard thing for a country to have to witness and to go through. And there was a lot of trouble during that period of time. Obviously, I was young, like 5 years old. I was born in 65, so it wasn't anything I even knew anything about. But learning about your history, you realize, boy, that was a pretty tumultuous time. And
it seems pretty apparent that the reason why this was happening for them was what they were speaking out about.
Yeah, that's that's almost a topic for another day. But yeah, these were people that were speaking out on things that today would be considered just basic human rights, I think. And for that speech, for that desire to say, hey, judge me by the content of my character rather than the color of my skin, they had a bullet put through them. Or people that didn't go along with the narrative, they were taken out. And so who's behind that and who's responsible? That's still up for debate to this day. But the fact remains is that these were influential public figures that were targeted by somebody because of their beliefs. And that's really antithetical to what this country was really supposed to be about. And I think it, again, caused a lot of people to have very serious concerns and question authority at that point in time. I'd like to bring up a quote, if I could, from somebody who, again, I didn't know much about, but I have since learned a little bit about, because he was killed when I was just very small. But it was Robert Kennedy Jr. And let's see here. A guy like that running for office gets up and starts saying things like that at a time in this country when standing up for people of another race wasn't really well thought of by a lot of people. And for that, he wound up getting a bullet. And so when you have all of those sort of things happen, in a country, it can cause people to have distrust and all those sort of things. I think that's partly the reason why things trended that way in the early 60s. And the next couple of decades, in my opinion, 65 was a good year. Yes, I concur. You know why that was such a good year?
Yeah. I mean, I'd already existed for a while. But
Yeah.
But you graced our presence.
That's right. Yeah, I was just an accident. It's all good. Yeah. So
was I.
So in the the 70s and the 80s, not to say there wasn't things that happened there that weren't of consequence, but from the standpoint of incivility, I don't really know if that I can cite as being a time when things were starting to change. I think for me, just the recognition of when the next transition occurred, I would say was probably starting in the 90s. And the reason why I say that, in the 90s up into present, I think what we've seen is a rise of the digital age. And the digital age has been, in my opinion now, has been one of the biggest contributors to a loss of civility, because for the first time, we actually had more than one voice giving us information. Because for decades, it was three networks. It was ABC, CBS and NBC that informed Americans about the world around them. And what we got from that was, hey, this is how things are. This is the news. And so we were all had that common, this is where you go to get your information. These are the authorities. This is the narrative. And we accepted that for the most part. I don't think there was alternative voices out there. But when the digital age came to be, like in 82 is when like MTV came to be. I think that CNN started about that time. So I guess it would have been in the 80s, right? But it accelerated in the 90s because we had a lot more access to that information. And you had the different networks. You had the Fox News, the CNN, you had all of these sort of things. And then you started seeing what you have now is just a cavalcade of, it's just a flood of information coming from all different areas. You've got all kinds of people reporting on the news, all kinds of people speaking out about things, which that gives rise to people questioning what's really going on. So you've got extremes on both sides saying, hey, this is what's going to happen, or this is what's going to happen. And it's pulling people in a different direction, and there's less cohesiveness and less I think there's more distrust, not only in our institutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But within each other. And so I don't know. What's your thoughts on whether or not do you think that there's like a happy medium of news, right? Or just should anything go?
I think people should be able to voice their opinion and not be demonized for that. I mean, because we all have different ideas as to what's going on, and there should be a happy medium that we could discuss and agree upon.
Well, I'm talking about the news you're receiving. So should just any news?
Well, I don't think it should be all one direction, because that's just not the way that's not the way life is. So you should be able to hear news from all over, and they shouldn't be regurgitating the same story on every channel you watch either. You should actually have your ability to come up with your own decision.
Yeah, I think that what we've had, what's caused this is just a less human interaction. We've got less people interacting with one another, and I think that leads to less socialization.
Well, I have a beef with that with children who are in shopping carts holding.
You're going to need to speak up.
Oh, well, I said I had a beef with that with children who are toddlers, and they're in the shopping cart, and instead of interacting with their parents and learning how to become social, they're interacting with an object. And they grow up just brushing past you and not knowing how to socialize. And so where normally you would, or at least when I grew up, there would be a person that would offer to help do something or provide assistance or just simply say, hi, how are you?
Right.
Where now it's like they see somebody, turn the other way, put their heads down and walk right past you.
Yeah. I think you see a lot more of that in the cities. When you go to a small town, generally speaking, people are a lot more civil. I've noticed that for sure. I mean, when we moved here, right? When we moved to this county, it's like when you see somebody on the back roads, you wave to them. You don't know when you're going to see another rig. And so when you see somebody coming from the other way, you wave. And that's just the way that it is when you're on these back roads. And it's like that in large part in small towns, still places. I'm not saying it's like this everywhere in the United States. I'm saying generally speaking, there's been a loss of civility. And I think some of that is just due to that, like you were just talking about, not having the ability to actually interact with another person in the way that you should, by looking them in the eye, speaking directly to them, reaching out, shaking their hand, and
well, it's the population that's coming up. It's the young kids that are coming up, and they just don't know how to do that.
Right. Right. Well, getting back to what I was saying before about the information that's out there, is there a happy medium, or should just anything go? I think you kind of addressed that. I mean, I personally think that
I think people should be able to speak their minds. I don't think it should be.
well, that's free speech. I'm not talking about free speech. I'm talking about the news that's presented to you. Of course, we should be able to speak our mind. I'm talking about the news that's presented out there on the internet or on cable news or whatever. Should anything go?
Again, I would say if it's the truth, I think people should speak the truth.
What's the
And
truth?
be honest.
What's the truth?
That's where.
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, what is the truth? And we're all seeking that, I think. And so the thing that I think is that it should be, everybody should have the ability to determine for themselves what is actually the truth. Just put everything out there and let people decide, hey, you know what? That's a little far out there for me. I'm not going to go with that. That's cool. You can have an opinion. These people can show their opinion. And then, you know, I think that's just the way that it has to be. The other part to that, though, is, you know, when you look at our society, I think from the standpoint of civility and where we are headed, it's kind of hard to argue that this is the best model that we have, because I mean, clearly our country is like imploding in many, many ways when you talk about civility, because you can go to another country that's run from a totalitarian perspective, and there's a lot more civility there because of the punishment that will be coming your way if you're not. And so I'm not saying that's the right way to go.
So is that civil?
No, I'm not saying that's civil. I'm just saying, I mean, you have to look at it from the standpoint, or at least I do. I try to look at it like, well, you know, China has like billions of people there and they're keeping those people in line. How are they doing that? Well, they're doing that by telling people, if you do this, this is the punishment. We've got laws on the books where we say, if you do this, this is the punishment, and then we don't fucking enforce it.
Right.
Right? So that's the problem. We have
And they should be
lawlessness.
followed through.
We have lawlessness where we do have laws on the books and people are deciding, oh, I'm not going to enforce that. Or you know what? The punishment doesn't fit the crime. So that's a problem that we have in this country. And yeah, I think that, you know, people should have the freedom to do what they want, but clearly what we have going on in this country is not working. It's failing. And so what do you think the causes of that are?
Why it's failing?
Mm-hmm. What other things have you?
I think that along with the homeless and the theft that we have going on, and none of that is being taken. It's not being controlled. People can walk in stores and steal stuff and walk out. I actually was reading an article. I told you that we have a 950, I think it is, that they can steal before police will come in and interact. And even at that, that's debatable if they'll actually even respond to that.
Yeah.
But I was reading an article where they'll go in and they'll steal that, get rid of it, and actually turn around and come right back and steal another 950.
What she's referring to is a proposition that was passed back in like I want to say like 2014. So this has been on the books for quite a while, and this gave us fits when I was working. In my job, we had inmates in the camp that I was running. We had 120 inmates in that camp, and we had a lot of trouble keeping the population up because of this particular proposition and another one that let a lot of criminals out. It let a lot of people who had committed crimes out on the street. So we wound up having a harder time getting people out to the camp system to fight fire. But what she's referring to is Prop 47. And what that essentially has wound up having an effect of in this country is an increase in crime, because people know what those limits to them getting actually penalized is, which it's $950. So let me read this real quick. It says, I feel we've been trained to keep our opinions to ourselves, and one reason for that is the constant fighting that we see in our polarized society. That's from Forest Homestead, Idaho. I would say that's well said, man.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I think that there's a lot of people who have decided to keep their mouths shut for a variety of different reasons. And I think a lot of that is, generally speaking, it's in their own self-interest because they feel as though they'll be targeted, right? Because if they speak out, then, oh, I don't want to be the one who's going to, fall on the sword or whatever. But the more of us that do that, the more of us that don't speak out, what are you left with? So I think while people have the ability to speak their minds and speak in a civil way, I think we have an obligation to tell the truth. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to be incendiary or create a situation here where we're getting people whipped up into anything. I'm just trying to have a conversation. And I think that's what we need to do, because there's a lot of questions that have gone unanswered in this country. And like I say, it's up to us to make the change on how we want to see it, move forward, because it's not happening by the people that we have so-called, in higher office. Let me see where we're getting at here. Sylvia Gibson says, media are government representatives of the cause. They divide people, twist facts for whatever agenda they want. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
That's their overarching thing, and it's to divide us. I've been saying that for a long time, and it's surprising to me how many people don't just see that so clearly, or they've been so convinced that, well, the other side's worse, so I'm just going to stick with my assholes, even though they're assholes. I'm gonna ride with these dudes just because they're not those dudes. And that's the system that they basically created. It's just that binary choice of the lesser of two evils, and that's what we're stuck with. But yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of laws, man. The problem is we're just not enforcing them. I think we would all agree upon that there's plenty of laws. We don't need more laws on the books, but I think that a lot of times people put new laws on the books because they're just trying to leave legacy. Look at this bill I authored. I'm on this committee. I've done this or I've done that, and they want their name on something because they're fucking egomaniacs. They're sociopaths that want to control others. And so, a lot of this is just bullshit. They don't enforce the laws we have. I mean, how about, our immigration laws, which are flouted? That's a real serious issue. I didn't really want to get down on that road, but I mean, that's just pointing out the fact that, it's not about what you and I want. It's not what about it is good for this country. It's about what's good for enriching them. And I think that there's just so many people that just don't see that. Yeah, well, there's a reason why they keep their mouth closed in socialist countries, because they wind up, their whole family will disappear. But again, to the credit of the totalitarian, they keep those people in line. That's something that people here haven't been able to figure out how to do, treat other people with respect and dignity, and respect others' rights and shit like that. I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. That's not how humanity works when it's left unchecked. And that's why you sometimes have to have, societies like that keep people in line or make them disappear. I mean, I'm not saying I advocate that. I'm just saying, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere.
I don't know if anybody out there has actually gone through the self-checkout. You get out to your car and you realize there's an item in your shopping cart that you forgot to ring up. I personally turn around and go back in and say, hey, I forgot this. And the expression on the people's faces who work in the stores, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
But more people should be, again, that's being honest. And doing the right thing.
Right. Let me roll this video here and let me give you a little bit of context because y'all in another state, you probably don't know about In-N-Out Burger. You may have heard me talk about it or somebody else talk about it or whatever.
It's delicious.
Yeah. you may have not heard about it. It's someplace we like to go. In fact, I made a detour, put on extra miles today just so that my wife, because she loves In-N-Out Burger, could have some In-N-Out Burger. And we went and had lunch. And we like eating there. It's a very good fast food like burger joint, and it's expanding all over. It's now in other states and whatever. But this is the first store that they've ever closed. And I want to play this clip. And this is definitely related to Prop 47, which we were just talking about.
Prior to you doing that, and if you do have a chance to go to one, if you've never, and you have a pet, they do what's called a puppy patty. So they will do a meat patty that has no salt on it, specifically for your dog.
Yes, and ours loves it quite a bit. Yes. But anyhow, let me play this for you real quick. And this is just what's going on in California. May not be going on in a state near you, but at some point, if things continue down the path of Gavin Newsom's California, expect to see this.
Only Denny's restaurant has closed because of safety concerns. The restaurant on Hagenberger Road near the Oakland airport had been at this location for over 50 years. The company says it was not an easy decision, but the safety of Denny's employees and customers is its top priority. The area of Hagenberger Road is plagued by robberies and car break-ins. Just this week, a 21-year-old visiting from Texas was filling up his rental car at the 76 gas station near the airport when he and his friends were robbed at gunpoint. The In-N-Out Burger nearby is also closing its doors. Starbucks, Black Bear Diner, and others have already left the same area.
So yeah, that's what's going down. It's very common occurrence here in California. San Francisco's had multiple businesses just leave, just like up and leave. They're like, yeah, we're out of here. We can't operate in this environment. I mean, there's a lot of crime, and I think that's just an increase in that incivility. That there's no nothing that suggests that's a part of a civil society when you have that level of breakdown. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. If it just continues down this road.
My vote says move it to where we live.
Move what?
In-N-Out.
Oh, you're still stuck on the burger.
Yeah.
She's still stuck on In-N-Out Burger, man. Yeah. I think one of the things too that's been a contributor that would cause people to think that this is okay is an incivility by our leaders to one another. When you see them speaking to one another or speaking about the other side, it's very vitriolic. And when they do that sort of thing, and when they demonstrate that to people, these are somebody that people are supposed to look at with esteem. I mean, I don't look at them with esteem. I look at them with contempt. But these are people that we should aspire to look up to. But yet, if we see them behaving in this way, what message does that send to the rest of us? That's okay, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's another contributor. We've also got, I think law enforcement has been in some ways neutered. Not in all areas, but in many cities, many areas, they just don't respond to certain crimes because of, again, laws like Prop 47, or maybe they, don't have the staffing to deal with all of the rise in the level of crime that they have. And so they have to pick and choose what they're going to do. And so when that happens, you're going to start to see more of it. You're going to start to see like, oh, I can do this and not be penalized, and there's not a penalty to this. What do you think the result's going to be? What would you do? I mean, if you were a criminal and you saw that, would you not say, oh, that's
more of it?
Yeah, it's an invitation. Oh boy. Oh boy. Look at this. Newsom says things are great in California. I left 13 years ago.
Yeah, he's kind of demented.
Well, gosh darn it, man. I tell you what, the thing that's most frightening, I think, to all of this isn't a person like Newsom. It's more or less the people that vote for a person like Newsom.
Who believe what he has to say.
Because there's always going to be people like Newsom. But it's scary to think the amount of people that would actually vote for a fucking guy like that are actually that easily led, that can have somebody tell you a lie to your face in the state in which you live and fucking believe it. I mean, he's been on a tear since he got into politics. And I've seen this. I've talked about this before, so I don't want to go on it, but I've seen this coming for years. And I guarantee you, he will be the nominee, not this time. I don't know what time, but at some point he will be the nominee and they will get that dude up and over the top. I guarantee you. He's just that kind of guy. He's got the money behind him. He's got the power of the corrupt establishment party behind him, that Democrat machine, those open and tolerant people that want to point the finger at you and tell you you're racist, but yet all their history and past shows how racist they've been. He's got that power of that party behind him. And so he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. And like I say, it's interesting to me how many people would actually vote for that dude.
I would guess he's going to be nominated for VP.
Oh, no.
Or chosen.
No.
I guess you don't get nominated.
No. I mean, Biden, I don't even know what to think of that. Yeah, I don't know, Sylvia. I do not know why they vote for him, quite honestly. I mean, I think it just goes back to the lesser of two evils, like I was saying before. I mean, it can't be that they really think, oh, he's the best choice. He's really, doing such a wonderful job, when, people can only look around themselves and see the decline of their own society. I think it's interesting to see, like, you go down to some of these very liberal, affluent areas where there's a lot of money, a lot of wealth and resources and all of those sort of things. And it's nice and quiet up in their little enclaves that they have up over the bay, looking down upon, the rest of everything, and I think if they were to start sending some of these people that they've been championing to come here illegally into those enclaves, you'd see a much different tone. I think that if they were to ship some of those illegal aliens, not to New York City, but ship them to Martha's Vineyard, or ship them up into Maine or Stratton, Vermont, or Maryland, or where all of these people who vote for these assholes lived, you'd see a much different flavor from the standpoint of politics, and people's opinions would change very quickly. But it's very easy to be insulated from the crime and the things that the rest of us have to see when you live in these areas that are super exclusive. And yeah, I think we all scratch our heads. How can they vote for them or whatever? And it's not really, I don't think it's as much the average person voting for them, other than the lemmings that are just, watching MSNBC and believe in everything. It's all the powerful people that have all the money behind these individuals, because it's an industry. It's a cartel. It's a industry of corruption. And the more I open my eyes to it, that's really kind of how I see it. But I don't know. How are you doing this evening, Lucy? Hope things are well with you up in the Canada land. Good to see you tonight. Where was I going before my latest rant?
That we should move them into all of the places where the liberals live.
I think that would change their mind dramatically on all of this sort of thing.
I think we could get a little food wagon up there so they had somewhere to go and get some food, and then just drop them all off.
That's not our job. It's not our job to get them a food wagon. It's actually our job.
Well, that would help them stay in that area.
Well, true, but it's our job to keep them the fuck out of here. We've got a border. Let's take them and send them back to where they came from. Don't even let them here. So kudos to like Texas for at least doing something, because Nobody else is doing something. I mean, it's a crime to let that amount of people into this country. But yet they want to turn around and look at you like you're some kind of domestic terrorist. They want to spy on your ass, right? Because you vote a certain way and say that you're the problem, but yet they're letting all these people in from everywhere, and they don't apparently care about that. So when people start to see that, I think that changes the mood of the country, and you have less trust in the system. That's the way I see it.
And how do they get there?
Well,
How do people from
it's an industry, it's money, because it's not cheap to come from another continent into Mexico.
so that's getting paid by somebody.
Exactly. Mexico's in on it, our government's in on it, and the place where it originated is in on it. The only people that aren't in on it is us, because we think, hey, we shouldn't be having these people come here. They shouldn't just be flooding into our cities, but yet they are. And so once this thing reaches an ugly boiling point and we have real problems, I guess that's what we'll find out. So
I still think part of it has to do with voting.
yeah,
This is an election year. They're coming across the border, checking the line, signing their name, and that ballot's going to be sitting just waiting to be pulled out from underneath the table.
It could very well be. It could very well be. There's a lot of different ways that people can vote electronically. You can, paper ballot. You've got hanging chads. You've got this. You've got that. You've got mail-in drop boxes. You've got all these different ways to vote, because we want to make it super easy for people to vote for something that they really haven't put in the effort to go and do. If it was important to them to do their civic duty, they'd make the effort. But we can't have people going out of their way and showing their ID and proving who they are, or even have the legal status to be here. We can't go as far as that, because that's racist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. Oh man. Yeah. Wait a minute. What's this Martha's Vineyard thing? Martha's Vineyard got rid of the illegals in less than 24 hours. I hadn't heard that story, but if it were the case, I would not doubt it in a minute, because those kind of people in those places don't want those kind of people in those places, if you know what I'm saying. They like brown people when they're in other people's places. And it's not just the brown people, because there's brown people there with a lot of money that don't want other brown people there. So it's a socioeconomic thing more so than any kind of a race thing. But yeah, they're definitely, they would not do well there. The town that Ellen lives in down there in California, in Southern California, yeah, they ain't shipping them there either. Where Oprah has a house up in there and all that, and all those basketball players and Hollywood stars and things like that are up above in Malibu. Guess what? There's no illegal aliens being sent there. Kind of weird. But everywhere else, they seem to find a home. Let me play this next piece, because this ties into the fact that we have law enforcement, but law enforcement isn't in fact actually enforcing the law, because they've been told to stand down. They have a presence. I've seen them at our local supermarket. They have a guy that stands there, hired security. He's got a Glock on. He's he's a peace officer. And we've talked to him and said, "Hey man, what's up with the people stealing stuff here?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm just here to
He's just there to hopefully they'll
deter him by his presence."
Yeah.
That's his
whole get down.
But he says, "Yeah, when they walk out, I can't do nothing." And I'm thinking, that's weird. But I mean, it happens quite frequently. We talk to the employees and stuff that are there, and they just "Oh yeah, man, it happens every day." And we've actually been in the store when people have run out with stuff, and we're just like, "The hell, man, this is kind of getting out of hand."
I've watched them in Walmart where they've asked them to remove their dog because there's stolen items underneath. But I mean, they couldn't do more than that. So
yeah. Well, let me play this right here.
California are robbing in a free-for-all frenzy because Prop 47 was passed in the United States, in states like California, where if someone robs any merchandise under $950, then it's not a felony anymore. Prior to Prop 47, theft of property valued at $950 or less was generally charged as a misdemeanor. Prop 47 raised this threshold from $450 to $950, which means that theft of property under $950 is now typically treated as a misdemeanor offense. One of the main intentions behind Prop 47 was to reduce overcrowding in prisons and jails by decreasing the number of individuals incarcerated for low-level offenses. By reclassifying certain offenses as misdemeanors, the law aimed to divert offenders from long prison sentences and provide more focus on rehabilitation. But some people argue this has become a free pass with no consequences for theft, and crime is at an all-time high.
Right. So, I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're seeing. We don't see smash and grabs like that happening here in our town, but larger cities, it's kind of a thing that's become a lot more common, where you see groups of individuals, wearing their triple mask, right? Let's just say they decide to go in and smash and then just grab stuff, walking out with clothes and just gangs of people doing that. I've seen it all over on social media. And I think what that also does and what that also signals is it's okay to do that. It gives people the idea that, hey, I can do that too. So-and-so just went and stole a bunch of stuff. Now they're going to turn around and they're going to sell it on the street and they're going to make money or whatever. And it creates, by having that information out there, and I'm not saying we should not have the information out there. It's not what I'm saying. I just think that by having it out there, it gives people the encouragement or the idea that, hey, I can do that. Because if you recall, prior to like the first postal shooting, you never heard of postal shootings. And then once you heard of postal shootings, it was like a thing, right? Somebody went postal. Mm-hmm. And that's because of what's portrayed to people in the media. So the media plays a huge role in helping to promote that incivility. And then we've got a culture in our politicians and our leaders that have decided to reduce the level of penalty for specific crimes because, for whatever reason, overcrowding, right? So what's the answer in your opinion, Rebecca? How do we get around that? What do we do to stem the tide of this incivility?
That's a difficult one, because we have police officers who can't do their jobs, and it's not just adults who are going in and doing this. It's teaching the teenagers that it's okay, and they're doing it as well and getting away with it. You had an idea of them having an anklet bracelet when they did this. But any answer you come up with, it's not going to happen. They should have to pay for the crime.
Right. Well, what's the penalty? I mean, we all can come up with our own solutions as to how do we penalize people. The problem that I see, guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so much of a problem right now. We don't have enough jails to lock people up. And I'm not suggesting we need to build more prisons, because what the prison industry actually is it's an industry. There's people that earn an entire living working in the prison system, and they have very lucrative and good high-paying jobs with good benefits. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be entitled to that, but I'm not saying that we need to further incentivize another industry related to somebody else's demise. So I don't know what the answer is, quite honestly, because now that the genie is out of the bottle and you've got 10 times more crime now than you had 15 years ago.
See, I think the stores actually should have their own securities and should be able to go after these folks.
Go after
But-
them in what
but-
sense? Beat them up? Shoot them?
to detain them.
Okay.
But once you get to that point, what do you do? Because I agree, you can't. I mean, they're letting people out because our jails are too full now.
Yeah.
So that's where I guess I'm at a loss, because I don't know what you would do with them at that point, other than them learning the lesson that if they come back, something's going to happen to them.
It's got to be punitive.
As opposed to just being able to go in and grab what they want and run out the door.
Yeah. I think when I was younger, I was definitely a lot more medieval in my my approach to this. You know, I was a lot more, you know what, you do the crime, you know, you're going to get punished, and, you know, to whatever extent. And for some things, I feel that way. For some crimes, I feel like, you know what, dude, I got nothing for you. Whatever you got coming, you got coming. But it's like, man, I don't know. You can't just keep locking up your population, because right now, like I said, the genie's out of the bottle. You've got so many people committing all these crimes. How do you turn that around? And how many prisons do you really want to build? Because it's not just building a prison and putting them all in a detention camp. You know, first of all, that's not going to play very well. And secondly, I don't know if that's actually something that we want to be doing as a people, you know, creating a Guantanamo Bay type style thing and just throwing everybody in there. I don't know. Personally, I don't know if that's the best idea, but.
Well, I do think that the store should be able to have, like I said, security to be able to defend themselves. And I think that that's going to lessen to a degree if people have, if they realize that they're going to get caught.
Sure, absolutely.
So they're not paying anything else beyond that, other than those items are going to go back to the store, and they realize that they're going to get caught.
Yeah. So
there should be something more harsh than that. But again, you're looking at what do you do? They're going to go to jail,
right?
And they're going to be out in a day or two.
That's the problem. You know, the security guard who's getting paid, like, I don't know how well they're getting paid. Maybe not well enough to put their life at risk to deal with some thug who's going to stick a knife in them or shoot them for them trying to apprehend them for stealing, you know, a TV, right? This guy's got to like put hands on somebody and risk his life for that, right? Mm-hmm. And then you catch this dude, turn him over to the police, and the police turn him loose. You know, I guess if there was a crime that fit the, you know, or punishment that fit the crime and a severe deterrent, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, North Korea seems to figure it out. China, they don't seem to have these problems. So again, where's that happy medium? Do we start making people disappear? Is that the answer? Or do we just lock them up, lock their families up, and then the word gets out that, hey, you don't do this and this is what happens? That would work. I don't know if that's the right answer though. You know what I'm saying? Because we're a different country than that. We don't behave that way. At least we're not supposed to. Maybe that would be a solution. I don't know. I'm just kicking around ideas.
I don't see that happening though.
What, you don't see what happening? Us, what?
What you had just stated.
Okay. Let's see here. What is our responsibility as citizens for these kinds of crimes? Just throwing the question out there. No easy answers. Yeah, see, here's the thing, man. If I see something that's taken place in front of me, unless it's something I feel very strongly committed to, I'm not going to engage. That's just me.
Not physically, but we have, like, when we were in Home Depot, we said, hey, that person just stole.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to try to like subdue somebody for property crimes or whatever. If I see some dude beating up an old lady, yeah, I'm getting involved. You know what I'm saying? Like, or something like that, or a child abduction or something that's like, hey, this is like, gotta stop now. But as far as what is our responsibility for these kinds of crimes, you have to define what are these kinds of crimes, because there's a lot of different like types of crimes. I'm not going to involve myself into something that is going to put me at undue risk and take me away from my family and my grandchildren over some asshole stealing a TV. And now I've decided I'm going to be the hero or whatever. Yeah, it's a judgment call on that one. I agree that we as a society need to each play that by ear, but I don't really have the answer to that. And it would be something that I would have to make like on a case by case basis. And I might not have a lot of time to think about it. So it's actually really good to think about those sort of things ahead of time. One of the things that I do with Rebecca, and this is just because of the sensitivity that I have for all of the things that I've seen in society where you've got a lot of this types of copycat mass shooter type stuff, where you see some whack job run into Walmart or run into some like place and start shooting the place up. So when we go into like Walmart, we don't separate. I'm not like, she's not like, oh, I'm going to be over here and we'll be over there. No, we'll do this together. And if for some reason we did decide we needed to be in different places, we would have our two-way radios with us for that reason, because I don't want to have to start running toward gunfire if I'm in a building like that. I want to run out the fucking back door. We're leaving out the back, or we're leaving out another exit. And I'm not going to involve myself trying to be, a hero in some shit like that. So it's one of those things. Yes, we as society should.
That, and we've stated before that we don't typically go out at night either.
No, there's no reason to like put yourself at undue risk. So people are way too comfortable. I can concur with that, man. Old McDonald says people are way too comfortable with the idea of 3 hots and a cot. And I will tell you this, because I actually worked with inmates in my job as a firefighter, both as a fire captain, and then I went back later for the last 5 years of my career as an assistant chief at a conservation camp with 120 inmates. And so I was around inmates for probably 12 years of my career. And whether I was out fighting fire with them or just interacting with them elsewhere, they are very comfortable in that environment and they know each other. And it's a very interesting thing to watch, because when we would go out of county, right, we would go to another fire or something, we'd see somebody we worked with, some person we're familiar with. It's an agency that we, know a lot of people in. But the inmates were the same way. We'd be standing there and the inmates would be hooked up behind the captains or whatever. We're taking them to chow. And they're like calling the other inmates on the other, hey dog, what's up? Hey, tell so-and-so I'm, whatever. And it was just like this family reunion of, oh yeah, I'm getting out and, say hi to so-and-so and all this stuff. And it was just like so bizarre, because I was just thinking, these people, man, this is their life. But, I started really thinking about it, and it's just like, they have such a good like feeling of security in that environment when they've been there for so long. And
Well, they have rules they follow through with.
well, they've got their own rules.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
They take care of business.
Yeah. Different levels of security breed different levels of all of that. But let's see here. What incentives, Gaines Girl says, what incentives are we providing as a society to the younger generation to make better choices? Yeah.
I think one of the things we talked about was homeschooling, so that they're getting a message that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think it's more so now than ever. I think parents should be able to see some of these things, but that could just be a result of me being from another generation too. Think about the millennial or the Gen Zer, because this is all they know. They don't have a perspective, as do we, of people that didn't grow up seeing things in a different light. They see it in the light that they see it now. And so I don't know if they are going to be the ones that are going to look at this and say, oh yeah, we need to homeschool our kids because things are like, out of control.
No, but as far as it's up to the parent to teach their child how to interact with other people. And so again, like I said earlier, when you see a mom shopping and her toddler's in the cart either playing with the phone or has a tablet watching a movie, to me that's the wrong message. And that's just my viewpoint. That's the wrong message. You could be interacting with that kid and educating them about objects that are in the grocery store and what you use them for, or, just having a communication.
Yeah, that's part of being a parent.
Right.
That's part of being a parent.
I think that is a way to pass it on to the younger generations to be more social and to learn that.
Right. Yeah. Much love, Cindy. Big hugs from here too. Wouldn't change start in the home. If we broke the law, my dad would have left us in jail. No excuse for breaking the law in his eyes. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, Sylvia, you're 100% right. I think that that's where everything needs to begin. It's actually our responsibility as parents to try to instill those values in your children so you can pass that on to the next generation. But, obviously other kids are raised with different challenges, and I was fortunate to have good parents. She was fortunate to have good parents. And fortunately for us, all of our children are out doing their own thing and are successful. And for that, we feel as though, we've won in that sense. And we just hope that it continues on. And I think that's what every parent hopes for, despite whether or not they vote for this side or they vote for that side. I think that's what it really all boils down to. But it really does, as you said, start in the home. I had a very strict father. And, I think I think there needs to be, there's those type of boundaries in those rules, and know that there's going to be consequences if you get out of line. That's where it has to begin. But so many kids are not raised in that way. So many kids, and I'm not making excuses for these kids. I'm just saying that, not everybody is as fortunate as maybe you and I to have had that sort of upbringing. I realize I'm fortunate in that sense that I had a dad that would beat my ass if I got out of line. So
I think yours was a little bit stricter. Mine was a leather belt that you'd have to go get.
Yeah. Well,
yours, I think you referred to as a switch.
Oh, we had all that. Yeah. It's all good. Let's see here. What's Lucy got to say? It says here in Ontario, Canada, if your child has a cell phone, one, you are not allowed to take it from them as a punishment. I'm glad my kids didn't grow up with phones. I wouldn't allow them to have one.
Yeah, we didn't either. Ours didn't get a cell phone until they were in high school, and they were only ones that could call.
Yeah, they're like a flip phone, but that's all they really had at that point in time. Anyhow, was like flip phones or whatever. But
and it wasn't the start of high school. It was like in their junior year. So
yeah, I feel good about the fact that we didn't, have TV for our kids and all that shit. It was just like, you guys need to get out and play, man. You guys you need to get out and go interact with each other and go find friends or whatever and do stuff around the farm. But
which is nice because to this day our kids are like best friends.
Yeah, they're close. Another thing, guys, I think has really been a problem for a lot of us. I know it has been for me. And I think once people start to see the two-tier justice system, I think that has really provoked a lot of, incivility. Because for 50% of this country, for 50% of us, it's ever more clear now than it ever has been that there's this decided left-wing tilt to our educational system right? Whether that be the lower K through 12 or the higher college grades, very left wing, whether it's that or it's the entertainment industry. If you have a voice that isn't, promoting a certain ideal, you're somewhat blacklisted in many ways. And also in the news industry, it's decidedly left wing. And I can say that about the one that's supposed to be even like conservative, Fox News. That's supposed to be the conservative channel, but they're not really giving you all the straight scoop either. So there's just decidedly left-wing type of a bias that's telling you things aren't happening, even though you see things happening. And when you see certain people of esteem, and I'm referring to our elected officials, who are able to get away with things that you or I would never be able to get away with. And when they're caught in that lie, you've got everybody that I just mentioned, all of those institutions are willing to cover up for them and to not voice their opinion and to not say, hey, you know what, this isn't okay. Because personally, I would not be okay with if my side, I guess, somebody who was conservative was doing this shit. I would be like, yeah, this is not okay, man. I don't care if, I feel as though I just don't think that my fellow countrymen shouldn't have a voice, or they should be treated on a different like system. That's not the way things were written. And so I don't know. I think the more people see that, and allowing criminals to run free, I just think that that's causing more people to be incivil to one another, right?
However, I think that's what they want. I think they want this chaos.
I think there's some truth to what you say. I think because they see how shitty things are, they want it to kind of like reach that boiling point so they can reshape things. But it's the fact that people can hide behind their screen and say whatever they want to say to other people with no consequence. You can sit in your room or in your basement and you can be a funny guy on Instagram or Twitter and say vile things to people with no consequence other than, there's no consequence. And so I think that has a rise in what we're seeing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. We already talked about some solutions, didn't we?
Yeah. Or at least what we feel would be a solution. Probably not anything that's ever going to happen.
Yeah. My crooked little homestead says, I had 5 kids, lived on the farm between chores and school. It didn't fizz on them wanting to go to town and hang out with other kids. They had each other. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important. You have that happening still in a lot of places, and whenever you see that, it just kind of like makes you feel good about that,
Well, one of the things that we talked about is once you grow up, your true friends are your family. And so it's great for kids to develop a wonderful relationship because that's who they're going to be able to depend on and rely on as adults.
Right. I think those are some of the reasons why things have, in my opinion, decided or just seemingly become less civil amongst people. And I wanted to talk about some solutions before we end this evening. And a couple of the first solutions that I want to mention, I'll say the first one is kind of a modified pipe dream, because I actually don't think that this is going to actually happen because of what we've already stated. And I think that, how are you going to just lock up that many people? I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. Maybe that would send a message to people that it's not okay to just keep breaking laws. You're going to be punished. Maybe we should just start building places to hold these people. If they can't be in society, maybe we should show them that they shouldn't be in society. But will that ever happen? I don't really think so. So if we could enforce the existing laws, because clearly I don't believe need more laws. We have plenty of laws.
Mm-hmm.
It always kind of, it was kind of silly to me to have these so-called hate crimes or whatever, and it was just a way to make things more divisive and racial, even, oh, it's a hate crime because, you said this or whatever. Well, you just enforce the crime you have. It doesn't need to be about, it's because of this person, you need to put something else additional on it. I think that's just a way for politicians to show the differences between one person to another and put people in boxes, which
and drive you apart.
Yeah. In my way of thinking, that's just kind of racist, but they think it's something to be virtuous. But anyhow, maybe we could enforce existing laws. Do you think that might help?
I think that would be a huge help.
Good evening, London. How are you? Good to see you tonight. What else could we do? How about being cordial to one another?
Absolutely. I try my best to, when a person walks past me, to say, hi, how are you doing? I don't have to engage in a complete conversation, but it's really nice when somebody is nice to you. I was in the grocery store, and unfortunately, the plastic bags were above my reach. I am not a very tall person. And most of the time, a person would nowadays just walk past you. And it was kind of surprising when a gentleman behind me said, do you need a bag? Here, take mine. And that's very refreshing. And more of that should happen.
Yeah. Again, I think it really does. I honestly think it does happen in if you're in the right places, because when I go other places, I see the goodness in people. I see how normal people are. And it's nice to be around other people when they're just being normal and not being weird and divisive. And, I don't know. It's just so nice to go and be around other people that are actually normal. And I think that there's a lot of that, but we have to be the ones who are willing to, engage in that as well, because it's kind of easy to shut people out, I think. The other thing that I know is a pipe dream that would totally make a lot of these problems go away is government reform. But that'll never happen.
Never happen. But I think that there should be term limits.
Of course, everybody thinks there should be term limits. That's like a no-brainer. But that'll never happen because it's the fox guarding the hen house. They're not going to write laws that are or pass laws that will allow them to be put out of the organized crime syndicate that they're a part of, that they're enriching themselves on the backs of everybody else by all of their sweetheart deals and all of their connections. And when they fuck up and do something wrong, they're not targeted for any of that. The Federal Trade Commission isn't going to go after them. But if you do something like that, guess what? Knock, knock, knock.
Yeah.
So it's just, when you start to recognize and see those sort of things and realize that government reform will never happen, and a person like a Ramaswamy who's talking about the things he's talking about, abolishing certain governmental agencies and things like that, of course, that sounds like totally legit. I'm in 100% favor of that. But I said, as soon as he started saying that, I said, that dude's never going to get off the ground. And again, that's why I say, mark my words, Trump won't be put back into office. I'm not going to say that he won't get the most votes. I'm saying he won't be put back into office because of what he stands for. He's a populist. He's for the people. He's for the common man. That's like people like me and you. It's not for all the rest of them. And they don't want somebody like that. And you know what? Let me bring this up. Do you guys remember when Hillary, now we're talking politics. This is good. This is going to get good.
Oh God.
Do you remember when Hillary was running to be the nominee after Obama, right? Obama was out and she was running in 2016 to be the nominee, and she was going to be running against Trump and all of this and that. But she hadn't yet secured the nomination. And there was this other guy who was running, liberal dude from Vermont, white hair, looks crazy, glasses. Remember that guy? Bernie Sanders. He was a populist. He had a lot of support. A lot of the young people were like all in on Bernie. There was a lot of liberals all in on Bernie, right? He was kind of like the Ron Paul of like whack job liberals. He was a populist, but it wasn't his time. See, he had more support. They ripped his ass off because of all those super delegates and all of that. And he started raising a stink about it. You remember that? When all that was going down, because they were putting Hillary in, he started raising a stink. And you know what I remember from that? I remember what?
I don't know if you're going to say what I'm thinking, but go ahead.
I remember that he was raising all this shit, and then all of a sudden, Obama called him onto the plane.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yep.
Exactly.
He went on to Air Force One, and then he came back out with his fucking tail between his legs, and he didn't have another thing to say. And it was just like, oh, okay, that's how it works, huh? Oh, okay. So that dude told you, no, it's not your time, homeboy. Shut up. Go home. She's the deal. It's not your time, Bernie. And they put his ass to bed. See, that's how it works. That's how the machine works. And yeah, he had the support of the people, but it didn't matter. And so I think there's a lot of that kind of moving our direction again. It's going to be a lot of support for a particular dude that they want on the ballot. The other side does, so that they can just say, look, sorry, sorry, MAGA. It's all good.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite as cut and dry on that as you.
Yeah.
I'm not.
There's a lot of different.
Can't really.
There's a lot of different scenarios that are going to play out. We're all going to see how it's going to happen, and I find it entertaining and fun just to speculate. It's merely just speculation on my part. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm not a political analyst. I'm just a guy, and I'm trying to make sense of all the things that I've seen, not only last time, but the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that, and just try to put it all and try to make some sense about all of this. It's kind of fun and entertaining because we can't do anything other than
it's entertaining
and laugh at it. But again, the next things that we actually can do is to teach the next generation, which we already really talked about tonight. And I think that's our obligation, to teach people to be civil with one another, try to listen to the other side, even though you may want to, choke them out at the neck, be civil to people. And I think that goes a long way. Not create conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just be cordial.
For us, we have a van that passes by and honks, and to this day,
no clue.
We have no idea who they are, but we always wave.
Yep, white van, been honking for 20 years. It's like, hey, how you doing? No idea. That's cool, man. I like it. I like that. Yeah, I wanted to leave you guys with one more quote, actually, from RFK. Yeah, man, I got you on that, Hogs. Says, all I'm going to do is keep moving forward and run my homestead. That's all we all can do, and I'm glad to hear that people are excited about doing that, because I'm excited about doing that. I'm excited about what tomorrow is going to bring, because I got plans, and that's what keeps people engaged in life and happy and motivated and looking forward to the next day. And it gives us all hope when we have plans for our future. And so that's all we can all do, is just continue to move forward and run our homesteads and our lives in the best way we can. Yeah, thanks, Lucy. I appreciate you stopping in tonight. It's good to see you, and
Yeah,
hope things are well with you up there for sure.
good night.
Let me put up this quote right here. Let me see what. Can't do that. Can't do that. Hang on a sec, guys. I don't know what I'm doing here. Why am I doing this wrong?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me do it this way. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, you can see that. Okay. This quote right here is by RFK. It says, every time we turn our heads the other way, when we see the law flouted, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and when we close our eyes and ears to the corrupt because we are too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak up and speak out, we strike a blow against freedom and decency and justice. I mean, there's a lot of truth in that right there. I think that's a great quote from what I believe was probably a great man. I don't really know a lot about RFK other than that he was shot while he was campaigning for office, and somebody wanted him gone, probably because of his beliefs. But I like some of the quotes that he has, and I think the things that he was speaking about and the things that he stood for were awesome. And I think that quote really sums up quite well what we should all be doing, which is, speaking our mind when we see things that are unjust, and speaking the truth as we see it, and not allowing people to silence us, because I know that there's a lot of entities that don't want voices like mine or yours being heard. And I think that it's very important that we take a stand in that regard, and to not self-censor ourselves to the point where we can't communicate. I really do feel as though at some point this will not be something we will be able to do, because as I said before, this used to be very controlled, this ability for communication. And they've already tried to, put out this narrative of disinformation and misinformation. And I just think that's very spooky in a sense, when you have people telling you what isn't information worth listening to. I think it's probably should cause you to realize that there's a lot of truth in the things that they say are misinformation, because if they were ridiculous and totally outlandish, they wouldn't even bother to.
They wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, they wouldn't bother to even point out the fact that it's misinformation. But because there's truth in that somewhere, they have a problem with it. And so that's the thing I think, we should derive from that quote. And I agree with you, London. It is a great quote. And I probably didn't read it very well. So you guys should go back and maybe look at that one and read it for yourselves. But it speaks to everything that we should be doing as people, and just exercising our First Amendment right, because it's the First Amendment for a reason, right? Yeah, I feel strongly about that. Well, cool, guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. Went a little bit long, but yeah, I didn't know how long we were gonna stay on, but I want to just tell you guys that you can catch the rebroadcast on, the audio rebroadcast on this particular live stream on Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Google. And yeah, go out, try to be better tomorrow than you were today. And remember, homesteading is not harmful content. Good night, you guys.
Good night.